morning. I'm glad to be back here. I have had a very hard time with my computer lately. I have to do major restoration and probably have to go back to a previous platform on my Mac OS. So I installed Catalina and it wasn't very successful as far as my Canon camera is concerned, which I'm looking at here. And it is dead in the water for me as far as making videos and looking at myself. I'm, using the monitor to gauge where I am. So I'm back on my webcam right now. Trying to make the best that I can. I'm going to be a big girl about this and not cry and bawl my eyes out, but I am really, I've been really upset the last couple of days trying to fix all this up. But I did, like I said, put on the webcam, so that's what I'm doing. And this is just a very quick intro on what I'm about to talk about, which is the DNA testing, which is from 23andme. That is the website that I used, that I used for my son and now myself and also my husband. So all three of us have now been DNA sequenced on 23andme, and I'm finding it absolutely fascinating, things that your family talks about. There's a lot of myths and fables and things passed down from one generation to the next that kind of get diluted, or it's not transmitted right, after like the fifth generation, and kind of lose itself in translation, so to speak. So things like my parents or grandparents would talk about in the old country and things that happened or where they came from or migrated, is not necessarily the same as your DNA. In other words, you could live in a country like I'm living in the United States, but that doesn't mean that I have any DNA from that country. So, like my mother, for example, lived in Hungary for, 2, 3 generations, whatever. But being Jewish, she did not really pick up any of the true Hungarian DNA from that region. So she has no German in her, she has no Austrian in her, she has no Hungarian in her. She has Jewish, she has some, Eastern European, Ukrainian, Polish, that kind of sequencing. So that was a very interesting thing to figure out, that, just because you're physically living in a location does not necessarily mean that you're intermingling with the DNA of that region, okay, if that makes sense to you guys. So anyway, without any further ado, I'm going to let roll the screen capture that I did on 23andme and kind of explain to you a little bit of my findings on there and how you go about going through each menu and what you're going to be seeing, traits as well as DNA as well as health. And I did buy the extra health sequencing. So you can pay 2 different plans. One is the just your DNA, like your regions and where you come from and that kind of a stuff. And the other one is your health also. So your DNA as far as what you could inherit, illnesses, do you have a recessive gene for anything? Traits as far as curly hair, as far as eye color, as far as taste. Can you taste something sour or can you not? It's really is fascinating to me. I think it's a marvelous thing. And I did open it up. I'll tell you the truth. For other relatives to find me. I think that's what the benefit is that, you open it up, for allowing research to be done, and the more people that are involved and the more people that are tested, the algorithms keep changing and you keep finding, distant relatives or people that have a snippet of DNA kind of sequencing like you might have. Without that, if you do lock down your privacy, that much, you're not going to really, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, benefit that much to finding, relatives in other regions and other countries that might be related to you somewhat. So you can see the pattern of migration, the pattern of going back 4, 5, 6 generations, and where, you know, your ancestors might have come from. So, you know, you might have a cousin that's like a 5th or 6th cousin going back to like your 4th or 5th great grandparents. And if you don't have that all opened up, you won't know where these people are and, you know, what's going on, where your ancestors have been. Okay, so that's all I'm saying. You know, everyone has to make that own decision on themselves. If you want to open it up that much publicly so that other people can find you, or if you want to, you know, really privatize it so that only maybe your immediate family can see you and things like that. Okay, so anyway, without further ado, let's get to the video and let's go online and see what it is. Okay guys, I think I'm here. Good. So this is what it looks like once you sign in. So there I am signed in, and this is the first page that you get, which is really the Ancestry overview page. And as you can see, no big surprises here. 25.8% Italian because of my father's side, of course. 14.6% Eastern European. That is definitely on my mother's side, and a little bit on my grandmother's side. And then 1.5% French and German. That does surprise me a little bit. We haven't had any discussion in our family as to dedicated French or German Aryan descent, so that is kind of interesting to find out. And I'm going to scroll down here. It does put you closer to all of these other people that have taken DNA tests on 23andme. It will show you how many relatives or potential relatives are currently on this database. So apparently, obviously, if they have not got into the 23andme database as far as their testing, let's say they did their genetic testing through Ancestry.com and have not linked it in or connected in, then you won't find those relatives. So if you're really, really serious about finding long lost relatives, I would strongly suggest that you do your DNA test at both the Ancestry.com site and the 23andme.com site, just to cover your bases, so that if one of your relatives only goes on one site as opposed to another, you can still see them. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in. There's also, I wanted to show you guys the health and traits. There is this side over here, and this shows you what are your risks and variants. You do have to go through a tutorial to unlock some of these health variants and genetic diseases or whatever, but it'll kind of list down here the ones that are slightly increased in risk, or you have a variant detected, and then the rest will be obviously not detected or not pertaining to you. It will you know, report your carrier status. So I do have a variant for familial Mediterranean fever, which that kind of is interesting to me because I have had kind of impacts of fever every now and then that are just, you know, I can't put my finger on it. It's not a cold, it's not a virus or anything like that. So I'm, you know, kind of wondering here, and I've reached out to my my physician to see if there is anything that I need to be concerned about as far as that is concerned. And that comes from the Ashkenazi Jewish background, so there is some sort of variant detected from that. Let's see, there's some slight increased risk for Alzheimer's, and then some age-related macular degeneration, which, you know, most people have things of that nature, so I'm not really, you know, concerned about that. There are 34 reports as far as your traits, as far as how you appear, things that you might taste or not taste, things that you could smell or not smell. I'm not going to go into depth about that. I just want you guys to see that. And then you can upload your lab results down here. You can upload actual lab results. These aren't coming from the 23andMe, but it's a good place to keep all of your results if you want them handy. There's health communities, so there is definitely communities you can reach out to as far as certain health conditions, almost like forums. And that's about it. And then the other thing is your family and friends. You can have your view all your DNA relatives, your connections, your family and friends overview. I'm not going to go into that because that's some personal stuff, and I just don't want to show you guys that kind of area. But it just gives you a good overview of what type of relationships you can have and your connections. You can reach out to people that are on the site, or people that you potentially want them to take the 23andMe test. You can invite them and reach out to them. And then you have your grand tree. This is based on your grandparents and I believe their parents, and you can connect through with that. And then some advanced DNA comparison over here. If you click on this one and you find a substantial relative that might be a connection, let's say a third or fourth cousin, you can actually compare your DNA to their DNA, provided that they put that up there as being disclosed. And you can see exactly where in the DNA chain you guys have some similarities and why the report is bringing it back as a second or third cousin or first cousin or anything like that. Of course, the more you are related, for example, myself and my son are related. Our strings are like 50% of all the DNA is obviously related to each other. So that's how it compares that's my direct offspring. So yeah, it's really interesting. There were a lot of interesting characteristics that I looked at. I'm going to go ahead and click on all Ancestry reports right now just to see what is going to be coming off. And here are all the variants. It just tells you all the different variants. And again, where you're Italian, where you're Jewish, European. My Greek, that's another thing that was interesting, how high my Greek and Balkan ancestry is, all the way up to 11.5%. And again, that is probably on my mother's side, so my grandmother's side. This French German, this goes way back. It says, way back in the 1600s or something. Nothing very recent. And again, I have not heard of any French relations or German relations. Anatolian, very little, 0.5%. British and Irish, again, way back. We're talking in the 1500s or 1400s. There might have been some British or Irish ancestry way back. Really zero as far as African hunter-gatherer, Anglo, no Asian down here, no Chinese. Let's see, no Filipino. So it goes all the way down, no Korean. So I really don't have any. Now this is interesting. This says Iranian, Caucasian, and Mesopotamian root. So apparently I have 0 Caucasian in me. So that's very interesting that, most white people put Caucasian if they are filling out forms because you assume if you're white, you're Caucasian. But there's actually a region around that area, that Iranian, Mesopotamian area. In fact, we can click on this just to show you guys what that is. Let me go ahead and try to get this going here. There you go. So this is, I guess, some of the pictures they're showing about the art and history of where it is. And yeah, it talks about Iranian holidays and just different regional art and history, things like that. I thought it would give you a map, but apparently it doesn't. But it says here, Central and East Asia, like genetic signatures, were introduced as a result of Turkic migrations and 13th century Mongol invasion. Today there are significant Armenian, Iranian, and Assyrian communities around the world, including many in the United States. So basically that kind of Mongol Turkey migration, it seems to not be picking up anything. So that was interesting to note that. And I don't have as much Hungarian as I thought in me, although my mother is from Hungary and was born in Budapest, but her genetic makeup is Ashkenazi Jewish, and there doesn't seem to have been a lot of intermingling between the true Jewish community and the regions that they were in. For example, Germany or Hungary, there weren't really intermarriages, way back as far as probably for religious sake. There was a lot of separation of religion and race in those days, and so people kept to their own communities. And Germanics, they married amongst themselves, and Hungarians probably married amongst themselves, and there wasn't that many that much of an interaction. So I'm not picking up any of the local genetics where my ancestry lived. Although they lived in that region, they did not intermarry, if that makes sense. So yeah, it was just really interesting to see all this, and see everything that is going on in it. And again, you can invite people, you can report things, you can print out things, and you can use this as a jump off. And they do have some research here and surveys that you can take. They'll ask you a bunch of questions. It usually takes between 5 to 15 minutes to do these questionnaires, and it helps the database kind of understand your genetics and understand some of your traits and behaviors and things like that. Like, are you a drinker? Are you a smoker? Do you like to wake up early in the morning? Or are you more of a night person? How do you sleep? Those kind of surveys, and then it helps them to, I guess, understand other genetic codes of other people better as well. So I hope this was interesting to you guys. I thought this was fascinating. I highly recommend it. I know they do have various sales going on periodically for 23andMe, also for Ancestry.com. I'm not being sponsored, by the way, by any of them. They have no idea who I am. I just thought that I would take this test because my husband has taken it, my son has taken it, now I've taken it, and I'm trying to get my dad now to take it as well. I don't foresee many surprises on my dad's side. He's not going to have any, I don't think, any Jewish traits in there. He'll have predominantly Italian because he is of Italian descent, full-blooded Italian. So I'm sure he'll have some Italian, and he might have some Greek going way back, or Balkan, some traits of that nature. But yeah, we'll see what goes on. And if he does take the test, if you guys want me to, and you can leave me comments in the comment bar below, but I might go ahead and also come on here and talk about his ancestry line and what we found out through him too. So thank you again for joining me. Thank you again for coming up here and being a support, and Happy New Year to everybody. I love you guys, and I will talk to you in my next video. Bye.